Pachinko by Minute Jin Lee. Quick recap. In Book I, we are introduced to an elderly fisherman and his wife who transform their modest home in Yeongdo, Korea, into a boarding house. Their only surviving child, Hooni, has a disability and marries a kind but poor girl named Yangjin. The young couple has a daughter, Sunja. Hooni passes away from tuberculosis when Sunja is 13. After his death, Yangjin continues to run the boarding house on her own to support herself. At the age of 16, Sunja encounters Ko Hansu, a fish merchant, who seduces her, leading to her pregnancy. Hansu is already married with children and is unable to marry Sunja. He offers to support her financially, but she rejects his offer. During this time, a religious man named Baek Isaac, who suffers from tuberculosis, comes to stay at the boarding house. They nurse him back to health, and once recovered, he proposes to Sunja after learning of her difficult situation. Sunja and Isaac relocate to Osaka, Japan, where they live with Isaac's brother, Yoseb, and his wife, Kwang-hee. Isaac becomes the assistant pastor at a local church. One day, debt collectors arrive, demanding repayment for a debt Yoseb incurred to cover the expenses of bringing Isaac and Sunja to Osaka. Sunja sells a watch that Hansu had given her to settle the debt, and shortly thereafter, she gives birth to her son, Noah. In Book 2, Noah, now older, has a baby brother named Mozasu. However, their father, Isaac, is arrested due to his religious activities. In order to support her family, Sunja begins selling kimchi. Before long, Kim Chang-ho, a restaurant owner, offers both Sunja and Kyung-hee jobs making kimchi for his restaurants, with a generous salary. They accept the offer. When Noah is 8 years old, Isaac is finally released from prison, but he returns weak and ill, and passes away shortly after. One day, Hansu reappears, and warns Sunja that Osaka will soon be bombed by the Americans, urging her to leave. He has been secretly keeping an eye on her, and it turns out that Kim works for him, which is why they were offered the kimchi job. Hansu relocates the family to a farm where they will be safe, although Yoseb moves to Nagasaki for a new job. Hansu also brings Yangjin to the farm. Unfortunately, Yoseb is severely injured when Nagasaki is bombed. After the war, the family returns to Osaka and uses the money given by the farmer to rebuild their home, making it larger. Kim also moves in with them and continues working for Hansu, who has now become a gangster running a protection racket. As Noah matures, he remains studious and well-behaved, while Mozasu struggles with school and often finds himself in trouble. Mozasu befriends a Japanese outcast named Haruki, whose mother is a seamstress. To keep Mozasu out of trouble, a neighbor named Goro, who owns a pachinko parlor, offers him a job. Meanwhile, Noah earns a spot at the prestigious Waseda University in Tokyo. Despite Yoseb's warnings, knowing Hansu is a dangerous man, Sunja asks Hansu for financial help to cover Noah's tuition. Hansu willingly provides not only the tuition but also money for room, board, and an allowance. At university, Noah begins a long-term relationship with a girl named Akiko. Meanwhile, Mozasu marries Yumi, a woman who works for Haruki's mother. When Noah eventually breaks up with Akiko, she spitefully reveals that it's obvious Hansu is his biological father and that he is clearly a Yakuza gangster, which explains his wealth. Devastated, Noah confronts Sunja, and when she confirms the truth, though she insists Hansu was not a gangster when they first met, Noah is furious. He drops out of school and leaves to start a new life, determined to sever ties and avoid being found. In Book 3, Noah now works as an accountant in a pachinko parlor located in Nagano whilst everyone including his closest associates believes that he is indeed Japanese. He has a wife and children. Eventually, Hansu finds him and when Sunja goes to see Noah. Subsequently, Haruki ties the knot with Ayumi, his mother's assistant, despite being homosexual. One day, she finds him engaged in sexual acts with a young man, although she never mentions anything about it. Currently, Mozasu owns one pachinko parlor and has a son known as Solomon, but Yumi would soon pass away from a road accident. At the funeral, Hansu arrives, but up to now has not found Noah. A happy boy named Solomon attends an expensive international school. Mozasu dates a woman who was previously divorced with 3 children. For some time her daughter Hannah stays with her mother while pregnant since she is only 17 years old but seduces 14-year-old Solomon into giving her money. Then she escapes, thereby breaking Solomon's heart. Solomon attends Columbia University and later works at a bank in Japan. His Korean-American girlfriend joins him but is unhappy there. After facing complications at work and being fired, his girlfriend wants to return to the US. Solomon realizes that despite being seen as a foreigner in Japan, he identifies as Japanese. He decides to stay and join his father in the Pachinko business, even though it is less prestigious than banking. The book concludes with Sunja visiting Isaac's grave and discovering that Noah had regularly visited the grave, even while living in Nagano. Sunja buries a photo of Noah in the soil at the gravesite, marking her enduring love and sorrow. Section-by-section summary. Book I, Goyoung Hometown, 1910–1933. Chapter 1. An elderly fisherman and his wife convert their small home into a boarding house in the fishing village of Yeongdo. They have 3 sons, but only Hooni survives. Despite being a cripple, Hooni is literate, strong, and kind-hearted. In 1910, when Hooni is 27, Korea is annexed by Japan. In 1911, Hooni's mother arranges a matchmaker to find him a wife. Thanks to the financial stability of the boarding house, the matchmaker secures a healthy bride for Hooni. Yang Jin, a 15-year-old from a poor family, meets Hooni on their wedding day. Soon after, Yang Jin becomes pregnant, but the baby dies at just 7 weeks old. Hooni's parents also pass away, and after several births and deaths, only their 4th child, Sunja, survives. Hooni dies of tuberculosis when Sunja is 13 years old. Chapters 2–4. In November 1932, Yang Jin, now 37, faces rising rent costs and the recent Japanese invasion of Manchuria. Resourceful as ever, she manages to make ends meet. Her lodgers, a group including 3 Chung brothers, 2 young men from Daegu, and a widower from Busan, discuss politics over meals, hoping the Chinese will stand up to the Japanese. Baek Isaac, a well-dressed traveler from Pyongyang, arrives at the boarding house seeking to stay for a few weeks. He mentions that his brother, Baek Yoseb, had stayed there 10 years prior and had greatly admired Hooni. Isaac and Yoseb's parents founded a Christian church in the north. Isaac is on his way to Osaka to find his brother. The next day, Yang Jin and Jun, the coalman, gossip about Isaac being a Protestant minister. Shortly after, Isaac's tuberculosis, which had resurfaced from 2 years ago, flares up again. Too weak to leave, Yang Jin arranges to separate him from the other boarders to prevent the spread of the illness. Chapters 5–6. As the months passed by, Sunja's pregnancy becomes a well-kept family secret. In fact, only her mother knows about this turn of events. Sunja, now 16, is attractive and industrious though pregnant. Before this life-changing experience, she had met while still on season break from school, in June of that year, the new fish broker at the fish market where she used to work. Ko Hansu was his name. He was wealthy and often tried to chat with Sunja. One day some boys would want to attack her, but Hansu scared them away. Afterwards Sunja started making conversations with him. Then over the following 3 months, he narrated stories from his travels around different countries all over the world. At one time they picked mushrooms together and made love numerous times after all, once when he left for Japan on business matters, but before long upon returning, she told him about her pregnancy. Later he disclosed to her that he had wife and children living in Osaka. He promised to take care of her financially, yet Sunja felt deceived and didn't want anything to do with him anymore, instead submitted herself for rejecting Hansu, who was mean to him, making her leave. Chapters 7–9. Isaac gradually recovers from his tuberculosis over the course of 3 months. During this time, he writes to his brother in Osaka and discusses Sunja's pregnancy with Yang Jin, revealing that no one else knows about it. The following day, Isaac visits Pastor Shin, contemplating the idea of asking Sunja to marry him. He believes this would not only help Sunja by giving her child a name, which traditionally only men can provide, but would also be a way to repay Yang Jin and Isaac's gratitude for their care. Additionally, it would fulfill his own desire for a wife, and he hopes it will spare any future spouse the burden of an early widowhood due to his health issues. After discussing his intentions with Yang Jin, who is relieved by the idea, Isaac approaches Sunja. He proposes marriage and asks if she thinks she could love him, love God, and forget the other man. Sunja agrees to all these conditions. Chapters 10-11. Isaac, Yang Jin, and Sunja visit Pastor Shin, who speaks with Sunja about her sins before officiating their marriage, which is completed in just a few minutes. As a special gesture, Yang Jin buys a small bag of rice so Isaac and Sunja can enjoy a nice meal before departing for Osaka. Back at home, the two servant girls, Bokhi and Doki, excitedly discuss the marriage and Sunja's upcoming move to Osaka. The boarders also give Sunja a few yen as wedding gifts. Before Sunja leaves, she confides in her mother about the truth concerning Hansu and shows her a gold watch he gave her. Yang Jin advises Sunja to keep the watch in case she needs to sell it in the future and strongly warns her never to see Hansu again. Chapters 12-14. In April 1933, Isaac and Sunja travel to Osaka, where Sunja is amazed by the modern buildings, Western-style luxuries, and the train system. They arrive in Ikaino, a district where Koreans like Yoseb and his wife Kyung-hee live. Kyung-hee, who is both beautiful and kind, makes Sunja feel welcome. Though they live in a dilapidated house, Yoseb owns his property, unlike most residents, as the Japanese refuse to rent good houses to Koreans. Yoseb cautions Isaac and Sunja not to be too generous with the neighbors, as their previous kindness led to the neighbors breaking into their home and stealing their valuables. He also warns them against getting involved in politics or organizing, as it could lead to arrest. That night, Sunja and Isaac share their first intimate moment, with Isaac being tender and caring, a stark contrast to Hansu. The following day, Isaac starts his new role as associate pastor at the Hanguk Presbyterian Church, led by Pastor Yo. He meets Sexton Hu, a young Chinese man who also works at the church. Although the salary is only 15 yen a month, Isaac assures them that he will find a way to manage. At the church, Sunja encounters a Korean sister who has been receiving monetary gifts from a Japanese factory manager in exchange for dinners. She hopes to support her parents and fund her brother's education. Pastor Yo tells her that this arrangement is morally wrong and a sin, even though it may be forgiven by God. He warns her that the man will likely expect more in return and advises her to end the arrangement, even if it means her brother may not be able to continue his schooling. Chapters 15-17. Kyung-hee and Yoseb generously offer Sunja and Isaac free accommodation, and Sunja and Kyung-hee quickly form a strong bond. Kyung-hee dreams of selling her homemade kimchi and pickles at the market, but Yoseb disapproves of her working. One day, two men arrive at their door demanding repayment for a debt Yoseb incurred. After confirming that the debt is legitimate, money borrowed to cover Sunja and Isaac's travel expenses, Sunja decides to sell her gold watch to settle the debt, avoiding further interest. Later, Yoseb is angered by the thought of others shaming him for allowing a woman to pay off his debt. Isaac tries to defuse the situation, arguing that the debt is actually his because it was incurred for his travel. Yoseb and Isaac are puzzled by how Sunja came to have such an expensive watch, and Sunja fabricates a story, claiming her mother gave it to her. Isaac privately wonders if the watch might have been stolen. However, with the arrival of baby Noah, the focus shifts to family matters, and they decide to move past the issue. Book 2, Motherland, 1939-1962. Chapters 1-3. By 1939, Noah has a 1-month-old brother named Mosasu. Yoseb goes to the church in search of his wife or brother, only to learn that Isaac has been arrested. Sexton Hu was caught mouthing the Lord's Prayer instead of pledging allegiance to the Japanese emperor, leading to Isaac, Pastor Yo, and Hu being imprisoned. Yoseb finds Sunja and Kyung-hee at the police station, but they are not allowed to see Isaac. The next day, the police come to confiscate some of Isaac's belongings and the church is padlocked. With Isaac in jail, Sunja realizes they need additional income. Although Yoseb initially resists, he ultimately agrees to help. Sunja begins selling kimchi at the market, with Kyung-hee looking after Mosasu at home. As Sunja gains experience, she faces difficulties, such as occasional shortages of cabbage for her kimchi. In April 1940, Kim Chang-ho, a restaurateur, approaches with an offer to buy all the kimchi they can produce. He proposes hiring them for 35 yen each, totaling 70 yen, to make kimchi, providing the ingredients and kitchen in return. He also agrees to let Sunja leave early to pick up Noah and bring Mozasu along as long as the work is completed. Despite Yoseb's desire to refuse the offer, given that he earns only 45 yen a month, half of what his Japanese counterparts make, the family desperately needs the money. Chapters 4 and 5. In May 1942, 8-year-old Noah Beck is faring better than many of his peers at school, excelling in his studies. Unlike his family, Noah has lost faith in God, feeling betrayed by the fact that his father was taken away for no apparent reason. One day, a thin and ragged man appears at their door. It's Isaac. Noah rushes to the restaurant to get Sunja. When she sees Isaac, Sunja realizes they had failed to provide him with the food and clean clothing she had intended to send. Isaac's hair is white, and his teeth are cracked or missing. Yo and Hu had both passed away the previous day. Isaac's tuberculosis has returned, and Sunja and Yoseb spend the night cleaning him, battling lice and mites, and trying to provide some comfort. Chapters 6 and 7. In December 1944, Yoseb has become a gloomy figure since Isaac's death, and the restaurant has been shut down due to the military requisitioning all metal items, including pots, bowls, and utensils. One day, Hansu appears at Sunja's door. He has been tracking her ever since she pawned the watch. Hansu, who owns the restaurant where Sunja worked, and has connections with powerful figures through his wife, informs her that the Americans will soon bomb Osaka and that Japan is losing the war. He insists that Sunja and her family must leave because it is too dangerous. Going back to Korea is not an option due to the severe food shortages there. Hansu assures Sunja that he will check on her mother, and arranges for her to stay with a sweet potato farmer named Tamaguchi, whom she can work for until the war ends. He instructs Sunja to say that Kim Chang-ho, her former boss, informed her of this. Coincidentally, Yoseb secures a higher-paying job in Nagasaki. Thus, Sunja, Kyung-hee, and the boys move to work for Tamaguchi and his wife, Kyoko, on their farm. They are welcomed for their strength and diligence. Noah and Mozasu are also given chores on the farm. For months later, Hansu arrives at the farm with Young Jin, who joins them, and Kim Chang-ho also comes to stay. Chapter 8. As the war ends, Yoseb is gravely injured in the bombing of Nagasaki. Hansu arrives at the farm with medicine to tend to his wounds. As Yoseb approaches death, he asks Hansu if he is Noah's father, and Hansu confirms that he is. Yoseb tells Hansu that they will repay him, but he insists that Hansu should leave Noah alone and that they plan to return to Korea. Hansu counters that returning to Korea is not a viable option. He explains that Pyongyang is under Russian control, there is no food in Korea, and Yoseb's Japanese company has no intention of paying him the wages owed. Furthermore, the Japanese will not assist the Koreans. Hansu also fabricates a story that Yoseb's parents were executed because all landowners were targeted, though he doesn't know their exact fate. He tells Sunja that the northern, communist-controlled areas of Korea are in disarray and strongly advises her to return to Osaka. There, he promises that Noah can attend school and prepare for university. Despite Yoseb's protests and the grim reality of their situation, Sunja reluctantly agrees. Hansu's insistence on returning to Osaka and focusing on Noah's future underscores the harsh choices they face amidst the chaos of post-war Korea and Japan. Chapter 9. In the aftermath of the war, Yoseb and Kyung-hee, using the money from Tamaguchi, purchase a lot next to their old home in Osaka, which had been destroyed by bombings. They rebuild their house, making it larger and nicer with the help of Hansu's construction company. Although the interior is now comfortable, the exterior remains modest to avoid drawing unnecessary attention. Hansu's influence in Osaka grows as he operates a protection racket for local business owners, charging them fees for his protection. Kim, who now works for Hansu, collects these fees. Non-payment of fees leads to enforcement actions from other men working under Hansu. When Kim expresses a desire to return to Korea to contribute to his country, Hansu advises against it. He argues that neither the emperor nor the communists will care about Kim's individual efforts. Instead, Hansu suggests that Kim focus on his own interests and acknowledges his own moral shortcomings, stating he is simply skilled at making money. Hansu reveals that even someone like Tamaguchi, who appeared kind, was exploiting the war-torn population by selling sweet potatoes at inflated prices, with Hansu's complicity. To distract Kim from his discontent and personal issues, Hansu arranges for a prostitute to visit him, understanding that Kim harbors feelings for Kwang Hee. This gesture is intended to keep Kim occupied and less focused on his unfulfilled desires and political ideals. Chapters 10 to 12. By 1953, Noah is focused on his role as a bookkeeper for Hoji, striving to help his family through his hard work. Sunja, meanwhile, is working diligently to save for Noah's tutor to ensure he can pass his Waseda exams. Despite their efforts, Yoseb is burdened by high medical bills. Although Kim provides them with a small amount of room and board, Yoseb is adamant that Sunja should not accept any money from Hansu, maintaining his pride and dignity. Yang Jin, now 57, is preoccupied with the fate of the two former servant girls who left for China under questionable circumstances. Her fears about their possible fate as comfort women for Japanese soldiers weigh heavily on her. Mozasu, at 13, is struggling with school. Unlike Noah, who has channeled his frustrations into academic success, Mozasu's response to the bullying and social ostracism from Japanese kids is more confrontational. His tendency to get into fights has made him a troublemaker, despite Noah's efforts to help him with his studies. Mozasu's friendship with Haruki, a new Japanese kid who is socially rejected due to his family's poor status and his brother's physical deformity, represents a small victory in his social interactions and highlights his compassionate side amidst his own struggles. By October 1955, Mozasu, now 16, continued to struggle with his temper and his tendency to get into fights, especially when he feels others are being mistreated. Sunja has him work at their candy stall after school to keep him occupied and out of trouble. Despite her efforts, Mozasu's protective nature gets him into a difficult situation when he intervenes to defend his friend Chiaki from an unwanted advance by a customer. His actions lead to his arrest. Goro, who owns a nearby Pachinko parlor, notices the incident and intervenes with the police, leveraging his influence to mitigate the situation. Recognizing Mozasu's potential and troubled state, Goro offers him a job at his Pachinko parlor. He reassures Sunja that Mozasu will benefit from the discipline and structure of working for him, promising to help him turn his life around. By May 1956, Mozasu has adjusted to his new life and is thriving at the Pachinko parlor. He is no longer attending school, but he is content and finds purpose in his work. Goro, a burly and affable Korean man with a reputation for being charming and good with women, mentors Mozasu, teaching him the intricacies of the pachinko machines and promoting him to morning foreman. Goro also shows his support by taking Mozasu to Totoyama, a seamstress and Haruki's mother, to get him new clothes, signifying a fresh start for Mozasu in his new role. Chapter 13 and 14. In 1957, Noah successfully passed his entrance exam for Waseda University in Tokyo, but Yoseb requires costly medication, and the family struggles to manage their finances. Sunja considers accepting financial help from Hansu, but Yoseb is concerned that Hansu will use the money to exert control over Noah. Ultimately, Sunja approaches Hansu, who agrees to cover Noah's tuition, room, and board. When Sunja insists that the money be treated as a loan, Hansu threatens to reveal Noah's true parentage. Yoseb feels guilty for being a burden on his family and senses his time is running out. He is also aware of Kim's feelings for his wife. One day, Yoseb surprises Kim by acknowledging his desire to marry Kwang Hee and advises him against taking her to Korea while it is under communist rule. Kim informs Kwang Hee but disregards Yoseb's advice, proposing that she accompany him to Pyongyang. Kwang Hee, however, refuses to discuss the matter as long as Yoseb is alive. The following day, Kim departs for Korea without bidding farewell. Chapters 15 to 17. By 1960, Noah is in his second year of English literature at Waseda University. One day, Akiko Fumaki, renowned for her beauty and radical political views, approaches him. Noah is impressed by Akiko's arguments about a George Eliot novel and her willingness to openly challenge the professor. He finds himself intrigued by her. Meanwhile, Mosasu has been occupied with managing the 6 pachinko parlors under Goro's ownership. Goro is now opening a 7th parlor and wants Mosasu to take on the role of manager, a significant responsibility. They visit Totoyama, who now works exclusively as Goro's uniform maker and has a team of assistants. Mosasu meets Yumi, a strikingly beautiful new assistant, and begins a relationship with her. By October 1961, they have been together for over a year. Mosasu encounters Haruki, who has become a police officer, fulfilling his earlier ambition. Haruki has hidden romantic feelings for Mosasu. Pastor John Merriman, a Presbyterian pastor and a Korean adopted by American missionaries, is also Yumi and Mosasu's English teacher. Yumi diligently studies because she hopes to move to Los Angeles, where she believes being different is more accepted than in Japan. Mosasu loves Yumi but prefers to stay in Japan, where he dreams of opening his pachinko parlor and becoming wealthy. Chapters 18 to 20. By March 1962, Mosasu is married, and Yumi is expecting a child. Noah and Akiko often spend their free time at Noah's large apartment, which is rented to him at a low rate by a friend of Hansu. Noah makes his monthly visits to Hansu, and one day, out of curiosity, Akiko shows up uninvited during one of these visits and joins them for lunch. Afterward, Noah is infuriated by Akiko's intrusion into his private life. Akiko, puzzled by his reaction, wonders if his anger stems from embarrassment about his Korean heritage. This suggestion only angers Noah further, as he wants her to see him as a person, not just as a Korean whom she associates with to appear morally superior. When Noah decides to end their relationship, Akiko retorts angrily, claiming that it's clear Hansu is Noah's father because Noah resembles him and that Hansu must be involved in organized crime to afford such luxuries. Book 3, Pachinko, 1962–1989. Chapters 1 and 2. In April 1962, Noah is looking for work in a cafe in Nagano, where the waiter, Bingo, suggests a pachinko parlor that is hiring. Since they don't employ foreigners, Noah pretends to be Japanese. Hideo Takeno, the manager, hires him as a bookkeeper, with Noah working under Ikeda, the head accountant. By April 1965, Yumi has suffered 2 miscarriages. She is pregnant again, so Mosasu takes her to a renowned doctor who advises strict bed rest for the duration of this pregnancy. During this time, Sunja takes on the responsibility of caring for Yumi. Yumi reveals that her mother was a prostitute and her father was her pimp. They were not married. Her mother was abusive, leading Yumi and her sister to run away after their brother's death. Yumi's sister later fell ill and also passed away. Soon, baby Solomon is born. Chapters 3 and 4. In November 1968, Mosasu owns a pachinko parlor in Yokohama. He learns that Yumi and Solomon were involved in a car accident, which resulted in Yumi's death. At her funeral, Mosasu reflects on how Yumi had always hoped they would move to America, a dream he never fulfilled for her. Hansu, now living in Tokyo, attends the funeral. Although Hansu has been receiving payments from Noah, he does not know Noah's whereabouts. Solomon, now a student at an international school, is cheerful and performs well. When Sunja goes to pick him up, she unexpectedly encounters Hansu, whom she hasn't seen in 11 years. Hansu reflects on his lingering feelings for Sunja. Sunja, upset that Hansu did not respond to her search for him 6 years earlier, is angry. Hansu admits that he still hasn't found Noah but pleads to talk with Sunja because he is dying. That evening, Detective Haruki is coming over for dinner, so Hansu, Sunja, Mosasu, Haruki, and Solomon end up dining together. The family now lives in a 3-bedroom house in the western part of Yokohama. Hansu is 70, Sunja is 52, and Haruki is engaged to one of his mother's assistants, despite being gay. Solomon suggests to Haruki that he should move to Yokohama, and Haruki considers it. Hansu offers to assist with the transfer by leveraging his connection with the chief of police if needed. Chapter 5. In January 1969, Noah is still living under the alias Nobu-ban in Nagano, continuing to pose as Japanese. He works at the Pachinko parlor, where he oversees the business offices, and Risa Iwamura is the head filing clerk. Risa's father had committed suicide, which has made her considered unmarriageable due to the stigma of mental illness in her family. Despite this, Noah asks her out to dinner, and they eventually marry. They have 4 children together, twin girls, a boy, and another girl. Their marriage is stable but lacks passion. Chapters 6 and 7. In July 1974, Haruki is planning to relocate to Yokohama with his wife, Im. Im, who had taken over running the shop after Haruki's mother became ill, is now ready to sell it following his mother's passing. They decide to move, and Haruki secures a similar job in Yokohama through a call to Hansu. Im plans to stay at home to care for Haruki's brother, Daisuke, who, at 30, has the mental capacity of a 5- or 6-year-old. Haruki and Im are childless due to Im's infertility, and they stop being intimate after learning about her condition. One day, while visiting a park behind a cemetery, Im witnesses 2 men engaged in a sexual act. A few days later, she is approached by a female prostitute. 3 months after that, Im returns to the park and unexpectedly sees Haruki with another man. After Haruki leaves, the same prostitute from before approaches Im, but she refuses and pushes her away when money is demanded. Im chooses not to tell Haruki about these encounters. In March 1976, Haruki is investigating the suicide of a 12-year-old Korean boy who took his own life after being bullied by classmates due to his poverty. Unfortunately, Haruki finds he can do little to address the issue, as bullying is not legally actionable. Reflecting on his own childhood struggles with suicidal thoughts, Haruki is deeply disturbed. Seeking solace, he goes to play Pachinko and ends up losing a significant amount of money, though he can afford it thanks to his mother's savings. As Haruki is leaving the Pachinko parlor, Mozasu notices him and gives him some money to cover his losses. They chat, and Mozasu tries to lift Haruki's spirits. Mozasu is in a relationship with a woman named Itsuko and is content with her. When Haruki expresses his feelings about his father's absence, Mozasu reassures him by saying that his mother was better than 5 fathers combined. Chapter 8. In March 1976, Hansu takes Sunja to Noah's office in Nagano, which he has managed to locate. He advises Sunja that they can observe Noah from a distance but should respect his privacy. Despite this, Sunja is overcome with emotion when she sees Noah and rushes out of the car to confront him. She pleads with him to return home, but Noah refuses. He politely explains his current situation, revealing that he works at a Pachinko parlor, despite its less reputable aspects. He also informs her that he is now a Japanese citizen and asks her to leave, promising that he will try to visit her the following week. Shortly after Sunja leaves, Noah tragically takes his own life. Chapters 9 to 11. In 1979, Itsuko learns that her teenage daughter, Hana, is pregnant. Itsuko, who has 3 children from a previous marriage, reflects on her own teenage years, recalling her own pregnancy with Totsuo, her eldest son. She is troubled by her past reputation, which is further tainted by her relationship with Mozasu, a Pachinko parlor operator. Despite this, she deeply loves Mozasu. Itsuko remembers her younger years filled with a series of affairs with old boyfriends, driven by a need for their continued affection. Her husband discovered some erotic poems written to her by one of these men, leading to violence and their subsequent divorce. Her ex-husband gained custody of their children, and only her daughter still maintains contact with her. Totsuo, now 25, attends a low-tier college, and her other son, Tari, works as a ticket taker at a movie theater. On this particular day, they are taking Solomon to obtain his alien registration card. Since turning 14, Koreans born in Japan after 1952 must renew their permission to remain in Japan every 3 years. During the registration process, a clerk insults Koreans while taking Solomon's fingerprints, which enrages Itsuko despite her being Japanese. Before Solomon's birthday party, Itsuko and Hana have a heated argument. Hana accuses Itsuko of being selfish and of dating a yakuza, especially after seeing the extravagance of Solomon's birthday celebration. Itsuko defends herself, saying she married Mozasu for the benefit of Hana and her siblings, but Hana retorts that Itsuko did it for her own sake. Itsuko, who owns a tasteful restaurant, wants to be recognized for her success rather than as the wife of a Korean gangster, even though Mozasu is not involved in organized crime. Despite their clash, Hana returns home with Itsuko, needing her help, and Itsuko is relieved and happy to have her daughter back. Solomon's birthday party is a grand affair with guests from his international school, including children of wealthy diplomats, bankers, and expatriates. His closest friends are Nigel, the son of a banker, and AJ, the son of a shipping executive. A renowned rock band performs at the event. After the party, Itsuko prepares some food for Solomon and they have a heartfelt conversation. When Itsuko shares her sadness about her strained relationships with her children, Solomon reassures her that their hostility stems from their sadness over her absence. He tells her that she is a mother to him, and Itsuko embraces him warmly. Chapters 12 to 15. In 1979, Sunja is caring for her mother, Young-jin, who is suffering from stomach cancer, with additional help from Kyung-hee. Before Young-jin passes away, she expresses her belief that Noah came from a bad seed, but Sunja disagrees. Sunja feels that Noah simply held on to the hope that being good and working hard would allow him to overcome the harsh realities of the world, only to be let down by the way things turned out. At the funeral, Hansu arrives and shares that his wife has recently died. He explains that he was never able to divorce her because her father was his boss. Hansu proposes that Sunja marry him, but Sunja reacts with anger to his suggestion. After the funeral, Hana approaches Solomon and, despite his initial reluctance, encourages him to drink and eventually seduces him. Although Solomon senses Hana's restlessness and sadness, he is fond of her and wants to make her happy. Hana insists that their relationship remain a secret and starts demanding money from Solomon. Once she has taken all his money, she leaves. Hana does not see Solomon again until 3 years later, just before he leaves for college. In 1985, while Solomon is studying at Columbia University in New York, Hana calls him one night, intoxicated. She is still in Tokyo, working as a club hostess, but refuses to disclose her address. Itsuko has been trying to locate Hana, but each time they are close, Hana is fired from her job due to excessive drinking. Solomon remains deeply affected by Hana. Eventually, Itsuko tracks Hana down to a Kabukicho, red light district, Teruko bureau where she works bathing men for money. Itsuko desperately pleads with Hana to return home. Chapters 16 to 19. In 1989, Solomon is employed at Travis Brothers, a Japanese branch of a British investment bank, located in Tokyo. His girlfriend Phoebe, whom he has been seeing since his sophomore year, accompanies him. Phoebe, a Korean native who was born in Seattle, finds the notion of being North Korean or South Korean absurd, as it was all Korea when her parents left. She also finds it odd that Solomon is viewed as a foreigner in Japan despite his family's long-standing presence there. At school, American classmates were astonished by the negative stereotypes of Koreans being criminal, lazy, dirty, or aggressive. Solomon is skilled at poker and regularly plays with his colleagues. One evening, during a game, he intentionally loses the final hand to maintain a positive atmosphere among his peers. Afterward, his boss, Kazu, advises him against this practice and apologizes for any insensitive comments made about Koreans. Kazu also inquires about Solomon's father's ownership of a pachinko parlor, which surprises Solomon as he has never mentioned it. Kazu remarks that Solomon's wealth implies a common history among affluent Koreans, who often have a pachinko parlor in their background. Kazu soon assigns Solomon to a prominent real estate transaction that involves persuading a Korean woman, Sonoko Motsuda, in Yokohama to sell her property to them. Her refusal is currently hindering the deal. Solomon decides to take Phoebe to Yokohama for lunch with his family, who welcome her warmly. During their visit, Solomon inquires about Matsuda with his father. Although his father doesn't know her personally, he agrees to look into the situation. Goro discovers that Matsuda is unwilling to sell to the Japanese, so he proposes to buy the property from her himself and then sell it to the company. Solomon informs Kazu of this development, and Kazu is pleased with the progress. Itsuko did not attend the lunch because Hana is ill, suffering from a terminal disease. Solomon visits Hana a few times. She confides that, despite her refusal to see anyone in Tokyo, she had secretly hoped Solomon would come and rescue her from her life. She advises him to take over his father's Pachinko business and become wealthy. Later, Kazu calls Solomon with unfortunate news: Matsuda has unexpectedly passed away. The deal is put on hold due to the suspicious circumstances, an elderly seller suddenly agreeing to the sale and then dying right after. As a result, Kazu terminates Solomon's employment. The client suspects Yakuza involvement, but Solomon insists that Goro, who is not affiliated with the Yakuza, would not be involved in such activities. Kazu mentions that an investigation will be conducted, and Solomon is escorted out of the building. Solomon goes straight to see his father, who is having lunch with Goro and Haruki, a weekly tradition. Solomon inquires about Matsuda's death. Goro explains that she passed away at the age of 93 and that he had no involvement in her death. Goro reassures Solomon that if Kazu truly believed in Yakuza involvement, he would be too afraid to fire him, fearing for his own safety. Goro suggests that Kazu use Solomon's connections to secure the property and then dismissed him as an excuse. Chapters 20 and the 21st. Phoebe wants to return to America, feeling unable to work in Japan due to her lack of Japanese language skills and their unmarried status. She also harbors negative views about Japanese people, but Solomon identifies himself as Japanese despite the country's perception. When Solomon decides to remain in Japan and work with his father, they end their relationship. Solomon informs his father of the breakup, but Mozasu suggests that Solomon should reconsider and work at another bank instead. Mozasu explains that the business is challenging and that people will speak ill of him regardless of his honesty. Nevertheless, Solomon remains firm in his decision. Sunja visits Isaac's grave, where the groundskeeper speaks with her about Noah, who used to visit frequently. The groundskeeper recalls that Noah continued to visit even while living in Nagano and had encouraged him to return to school, even offering to finance it. The book concludes with Sunja burying a photograph of Noah in the soil at Isaac's grave. Themes. Themes in Pachinko include discrimination, stereotypes, and power, especially focusing on the experiences of Koreans in Japan during World War II. Lee incorporates various historical themes and events into her novel, such as comfort women and the role of women in Korean society, which can be examined through an intersectional perspective considering class differences. The novel emphasizes women's leadership roles during a period when men were predominantly in charge. The novel also features the motif of Pachinko, with its unpredictable and uncontrollable nature serving as a metaphor for the characters' lives. Lee mentioned that the title of the novel, initially planned to be Motherland, was changed to Pachinko because Koreans she interviewed seemed to connect more with the Pachinko business. Another recurring element in the novel is the portrayal of food as a symbol of wealth. Lee uses traditional food concepts, from the luxury of white rice to the labor involved in making kimchi, to illustrate the disparity between different social classes. Hansu's preferences for upscale Japanese cuisine are contrasted with Noah's taste for quick, working-class Korean meals, highlighting their differing successes and motivations through the foods associated with them.